If there was any shadow of doubt that Nintendo have not leapt into this generation, then those fears can be put to rest completely with the fact that the internet hangs with bated breath, waiting on a patch to fix very small and very isolated performance issues throughout the title that have been blown all out of proportion. Yes, shock horror, an open world vast title such as Zelda Breath of the Wild actually has a few performance issues. That is in both docked mode and undocked mode on the Switch. The Wii U also performs worse, but I haven't got a copy of that game as I have to buy everything that I cover, including this and everything else, so I'm not going to buy another game twice just for the coverage of Zelda. But I have got a Switch for myself, and I have been enjoying Breath of the Wild for a very long period of time. But now we've seen what everyone has been waiting for, the fallout of patch 1.11. So let's add it to the rune and see what we get. So, before we begin, I need to cover the fact that this is a spoiler-free video to keep it perfectly safe for anyone who doesn't want to see anything to do with Zelda or basically the game at all. The following few minutes of footage will be analysed in depth in a completely spoiler-free environment. So enjoy. So enough jesting, on with the analysis. The game has a dynamic resolution in both docked and undocked mode, and this is true of the pre-patch and the patched version. It can run at 1600 by 900 in the docked mode, but it tends to run predominantly at the lower end of its scale, which is 1440 by 810. This is in most heavier scenes, long geometry draws. The machine, like all consoles, is bandwidth limited, this much more than others. In the docked mode it runs at this level, but in the undocked mode it can drop even lower, hovering around an average of 1152 by 648 or around 1200 by 675. It's kind of in that ballpark level, and it does look very good on the 720p screen, even if you can notice the aliasing, which you can notice in the fully docked mode on screen as well. And this patch doesn't appear to change any of those statistics, but performance can dip. So in the heavier sections of alpha, bandwidth limited sections, long geometry draw, it could drop down to a cap of 20 FPS. This is due to the fact it's a double buffered title, therefore when it runs out of memory it has to drop to the lower level, and this can also cause some of the momentary spikes you get of 16 milliseconds during the frame time. But there's points in the original patch here where it can dip down running around certain areas with heavy foliage and long draw, and you can repeat these over and over again by running around. So the patch has some areas to fix. It can also do this in heavy combat sections, but taking one of the heavier and easily repeatable sections in Kakariko Village, which does cause all of these issues combined, light sourcing, long draw distance, heavy alpha effects, all work in harmony to bottleneck the system and performance down to these locks of 20 FPS. You can see on screen the comparison between the patch version and the previous one, the released version, and you can see a huge difference. It's not fixed, but they have certainly improved the quality and the performance from what it was on the original release version. We are now seeing sections which, how they locked 20 FPS, no longer affected in the docked mode. Now, the undocked mode was never as heavily affected. It was affected, and it could also dip. I just must stress this is filmed off screen, so this has a small margin of error, but I have gone through and checked most of the frames, so it is pretty much 99% accurate, but always take into account that margin of error because of the way the source is captured. But again, you can see the difference between the two versions. In the docked mode, it performs much better now, and in the undocked mode, I could not get any dips to happen after patch 1.11. And as you can see from these repeatable tests, pre-patch you get these 50 millisecond spikes as you spin the camera or run through the village. Once you patch to 1.11, these are completely eradicated. I could not get any dips into the 50 millisecond point. Now, I'm not saying that there's not going to be any dips in the undocked mode now, as I can't test everything. But this does look to substantially improve those issues that cause these small and momentary sections of performance hiccups, eradicating the spikes to 50 milliseconds. Now, the game never performed that badly in its undocked mode, much better than docked, even though that was still quite solid overall in my opinion and from my tests, largely down to the fact that it runs around 55-56% lower resolution than it does in its docked mode. And like I've already said, it is a very bandwidth limited machine due to the APU construction, unified memory and contention issues they create. They may have also worked on boosting the frequencies of both the GPU and the memory here, up from the base 1333 on their standard undocked mode up to the 1600 that's available in its docked mode. They may have also increased the clock rate of the GPU, which may have fixed some of these issues and solved these dips. Remember, the console also received a firmware update at the same time as the patch to the title, so some of this may have come from a firmware patch. But that is just my speculation. You can see on screen with the earlier section in the game has now also been fixed with very minor dips now compared to the 20 FPS, and in the background you can see the LOD is exactly the same. The game does suffer from LOD quite regularly throughout play, but you can see the trees and bushes circled appear at the same time as I run back and forth, so nothing appears to have changed on that score from my tests. And there we have it. With this patch, the Switch is now the high rule of them all. Sorry, it was just too easy to link into that. Okay, I'm off. As always, I hope you guys and girls enjoyed this. If you did, then please hit the like and subscribe button to support the channel and my future work. If you enjoy my tech analysis and hardware and game reviews, then please subscribe and share where appropriate to read more on the website, and I'll catch you on the next one. Let's ride.
Yeah.